All right, well today we're gonna stop that horrible noise under the hood once and for all. Yeah, that's right, you're gonna stop your whining. All right, so as you've heard and seen and heard from the other videos, because I know you're all watching, that really bad noise under the hood is coming from my air conditioning compressor clutch. That's a mouthful. And the bearing in there is completely shot. And what I want to do is delete the air conditioning from this car. Now, a lot of people would say, well, why would you want to do that? Well, because honestly, I don't really need the air conditioning. I drive my other vehicle in the summertime. It's got T-tops anyways. There's natural air conditioning right there. And it's too much money to replace the air conditioning compressor or the clutch assembly, which I can't actually find anymore. So the whole entire compressor, which then leads to recharging the system, which then leads to more money. And this is an absolute beater daily driver El Cheapo car, and I'm not putting that much money into it. So I'm going to delete the AC system altogether, and I'm going to show you exactly how I'm going to do that. Now, there's a couple different ways out there that you can delete the AC on these cars. I know ZZ Performance, they have a delete pulley which may work, and here's the pulley listed right here. And there are some other people using different smaller, shorter belts and deleting the AC from just bypassing the compressor pulley. But I'll show you why I can't do that. If you look right here, I've got these little updated, I guess you'd call it, heater hose fittings and connections, and they use this little strap which bolts into the housing there. If you change this to a shorter belt, i.e. using the idler pulley here and just wrapping around there somehow, the belt will come right into contact with that. So that isn't an option because I'm not going to go back to the stock style. I'm not going to change this. I'm not going to get into my cooling system. There's no way I'm going to do that. So the other way of doing it is to change the routing altogether. And what that entails is replacing this tensioner idler or tensioner pulley with a grooved one instead of a smooth one, as well as a complete reroute. So I'm going to show you the two parts I'm using for that. So here are the parts and actually the tools needed to do this. So you need a ratchet with a 15mm socket, or even a 15mm combination wrench or something like that. This is the pulley. I use Dayco just because they're cheap, and it's a Dayco 89015. And if we open this guy up, you can see it is now a grooved pulley, right? This bore is exactly the same. The diameter of that pulley is exactly the same for the most part. It's just grooved because the belt will be riding on the grooved portion of the belt, not the smooth portion. And we are using the Dayco 5060790. Now, this is what I found works for me. So basically, the reason why I like the Dayco belts is, well, not only that they're cheap, is I understand the part number really easily. So 5060790 means 79 inches long. If it was a 795, it would mean 79.5 inches long. Or if it was a 0800, it would mean 80 inches long. So I picked a 79-inch long 6-rib belt. They are 0.828 inches width, which is the same width as the factory belt on the car, which rides perfectly in the grooves of our pulley. So this is exactly the right width to go in the pulley. So these are only things that you need to do in terms of parts and tools. But there's one more little thing I'll show you. So first, let's go through the process of how to actually make sure your measurement or your belt length is correct for your car. Again, every car is a little bit different, and we'll go through the process of the install. All right, so now under the hood of the car, before you do anything, before you take any parts off or the old belt off, you want to measure where the belt is in relation to the tensioner, or how much tension your tensioner is putting on your belt. Because if the manufacturer or if GM has designed it to have a certain amount of tension, you want to shoot for that amount of tension with your new belt and pulley setup. That way you're going to be ensured that your belt isn't going to fly off a pulley or anything like that, because the belt over time does stretch a little bit. As you accelerate and decelerate on the throttle, the belt may stretch a little bit. That tensioner is there to do its job. And there's a range of motion that tensioner sweeps through. So let's mark where our tensioner is in relation to the factory belt, or how much tension it's putting on right now. And then we'll see where we get with our new belt once we do the rerouting. Okay, here you see our tensioner right over here. There's our tensioner, and the outside body of the tensioner will be stationary, and the inside rotates with the idler pulley actually. So what we want to do is we want to mark the outside, which I have a mark right here already. And then you want to put a mark, corresponding mark, more or less on the part that rotates. So that's how much tension, or that's the marking, the indexing, I guess you could say, as to where your tensioner sits with the factory belt. Now we'll pull this all off and we'll verify and reference that when we install our new setup. So what we'll do now is we'll go in and we'll pull our belt tensioner pulley off and our belt. And one tip about these, if you've never done this before, is the tensioner, to loosen it, you go in a left-hand direction, which is normally the loosening direction for a bolt. But in this case, because that would undo itself every time that you were to adjust the tensioner, it's actually a right-hand thread. So it's righty-loosey, lefty-tighty. So here I am pushing down in the left-hand direction, normally the loosening direction, taking my belt off, and then I'll switch it to tightening direction normally, but in this case, it loosens the pulley. Then you can take your pulley off. So new pulley, new bolt, grooved pulley. And which way are we going to go tightening? We're going to the left, lefty-tighty. It kind of feels weird when you do this for the first time. It's intuitive to what you've done for so many years, but it makes sense because every time you were going to remove a belt, you would be loosening your pulley and potentially throwing a belt later on down the road. So we'll torque that up. Click, click. And then we'll reroute the belt. And I'll show you something interesting because once we route the belt, we're close to being done, but we're not quite done yet. Okay, so this is the new belt routing, and I hope you can see all that. We actually eliminate everything down here. So this is our really noisy AC compressor clutch and our idler belt. And we're actually using this grooved belt here on our tensioner idler, and you can see the routing. So it comes basically from the power steering pump up around the alternator again, back, loops around the water pump. So everything is turning in the same direction because the smooth side of the belt is still on the water pump, then runs through the new belt here and then basically around the crank. So it's a lot simpler, I guess, routing in a way, or eliminates a lot of this other stuff over here, which is your AC. And everything looks good and it does work very well, but there's one thing that we got to do. We can't actually use it just like this, and I'll show you that in a second, but we wanted to see where our mark was. So let's get in there, and you can see right there, hopefully, I hope you can see that our marks are just about exactly where the factory marking is. So that looks to me like it's a pretty good amount of tension on there. It's going to be as reliable as the factory setup, and that's what we wanted. But we have a problem, like I mentioned, and the problem with the system is right here. So if you look down here where my finger is, that little stud, or that little post right there, that's basically touching the belt, or I should say the belt is touching that. So if we were to run it like this, we'd wear through that belt. So you're wondering then, what is that post? Okay, so that little post, or that little stud there with that plastic piece around it, that's actually a dust shield. So there's a plastic dust shield which is behind the balancer and kind of covers up that area. There's also a crank position sensor in there. So I believe that dust shield does a little bit of double duty in there, protects the crank position sensor and keeps dust from getting into the seal area of the engine and all that. But that is basically what's in the way. So what we got to do is we got to remove that little post, and we got to make sure that that dust shield isn't shifting around, and we could probably do that with a zap strap or something. So we got to figure out a way to get in there and cut or grind that post off. Now it's not easy because there's an oil filter right below everything. There's a oil pressure transducer or whatever sender unit in there. There's some wiring in there. So we got to do it kind of carefully, and it might be a little bit labor intensive because I don't want to use power tools per se. So let's go figure out a way to do that. Maybe we do it from underneath the car, maybe we go from up top. We'll just see how it goes. Okay, so I was trying to figure out how to get in here and cut this off, but I looked a little bit behind and I could see that that looks like it's a hex head in there. So I did a little prying, and this is that dust shield, and it looks like this is actually threaded. There's like a hex right there. So I'm gonna grab a wrench and see if I can just wind this out, and that might be as simple as it is. And then from that point, we can take a zap strap or something and then just maybe wrap this up or tie it up to this housing, part of the housing here, and it might stay out of the way. So let's try that. Yeah, it is threaded. There you go. I'm just using a 13 mil here. I kind of bent that dust shield a bit out of the way, but you can just, if you can get the head on there, you can just wind this guy out. Hopefully it doesn't touch the tensioner, but I wouldn't think so. So that'll come out, and then we'll take a look at what it looks like after. Yeah, and here's what victory looks like on that. That's actually really, really long. I mean, well, I guess it goes through a thick part of a housing and then the threads in, but really long bolt. So that is out. Now we've got this dust shield here, which, I mean, you can push it out of the way of the belt or out of the belt path, but I think this little nose here can come off, so I can maybe snip that off, and then it'll be out of the way. All right, let's see if I can snip this off here using something like this, if I can hang on to the tool. Got part of it there. There, look at that. So that is basically removed. This is so little tension on this. I mean, if that touches the belt, it's not going to do anything. So you could even clean it up a bit more, which I might do, but then basically we'll run our belt again and we'll take a look at how everything looks one last time before starting up the car. All right, so we got the bolt now in the vise in this makeshift sort of soft jaw here, and we are gonna have to put this bolt back in because it does more than just hold that stud or hold that little post there for the dust shield. So we're gonna just cut this off with a hacksaw or some other little power tool. You can use whatever you want, sawzall, whatever, grinder, and then we're gonna put the bolt back in because that does, again, need to be in the car. It does more than just, you know, give this dust shield a place to hold on to. So we'll do that, and then we'll go back to the belt routing. So now I'll just come in with my file and I'll just take off the sharp edges and we'll be done. Mint. All right, belt back on. You can see now with that post or that stud out of the way, that little heat shield and everything, that's not going to rub against the belt at all. We've got good clearance between the belt itself and the other pathway of the belt, I guess, so to speak. So everything looks good. So let's start it up and see if it runs well and if it's quiet. Oh yeah, definitely a lot quieter, no more whining. All right, so I lied. So you do need a few more tools in this guy. You need, you know, one of these and one of these and one of these and one of these. So, but anyways, real simple. All right, now it's all done. So you've got your AC delete, and it seems to work really, really well. Of course, I'll drive it a bunch, but I don't see any issues with it. The way the tensioner is, it's tensioning the belt in the right spot. It's putting the right amount of tension in there. It should be a slam dunk for this car. And also you've got all that AC stuff you can yank out if you want to put something else in there, like, you know, round spinny things in there. You know what I'm talking about. So, all right, well, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you learned a little bit something. And for those of you that want to do an AC delete on your 3800 Series 2 powered F-body, this should work really good. Double check your belt lengths because not every car is the same. And I can't take all the credit for this. I did see some of this online, although I modified it a little bit because I felt that this way was a little bit better. Some of the clearances between the belts are a little bit better. But anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great evening, and we'll talk to you in the next video. Take care.